The Gospel according to John. Chapter 6. Passage 4. The disciples' reactions to the teaching about the bread of life. Then the Jews murmured against him because he said, I am the bread which came down from heaven. And they said, Is this not Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How can he now say, I have come down from heaven? Jesus answered them, Do not murmur among yourselves. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up at the last day. It is written in the prophets, They will all be taught by God. Everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father, except he who is from God, he has seen the Father. Truly, truly, I tell you, whoever believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness and they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, that anyone may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. The bread that I will give is my flesh for the life of the world. Then the Jews quarreled among themselves, saying, How can this man give us his flesh to eat? Jesus said to them, Truly, truly, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so whoever feeds on me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven, not as the fathers ate and died. He who eats this bread will live forever. He said these things in the synagogue as he taught in Capernaum. Many of his disciples, when they heard this, said, This is a hard saying. Who can listen to it? But Jesus, aware that his disciples were grumbling about this, said to them, Does this offend you? Then what if you see the Son of Man ascend to where he was before? The Spirit gives life. The flesh counts for nothing. The words I have spoken to you are spirit and life. Yet among you there are some who do not believe. For Jesus knew from the beginning who did not believe and who would betray him. He said, This is why I told you that no one can come to me unless it has been granted to him by the Father. From this time many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. So Jesus said to the 12, Do you also want to leave? Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and to know that you are the Holy One of God. Let us reflect on what God is saying through this text. In this passage from the Gospel according to John, Jesus faces the challenging task of explaining profound spiritual truths to a crowd that murmurs against him because of his teaching about the bread of life. Jesus proclaims that he is the bread which came down from heaven, which causes opposition and doubt since people know his earthly parents. Jesus continues, stating that no one can come to him unless the Father draws them, and he will raise them up on the last day. He emphasizes that whoever believes has eternal life, and his body and blood are true food and drink giving eternal life. These difficult words spark further opposition and misunderstanding, leading many disciples to leave. Jesus asks his closest disciples if they also want to go. Simon Peter responds with words full of faith and commitment. Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and to know that you are the Holy One of God. This passage shows how challenging it can be to accept the full truth about Jesus and his teachings. It calls us to deep faith and trust in his words, even when they are hard to understand. It also reminds us of the unwavering faith and dedication we should have in our spiritual life. If you find joy in our conversations, feel free to share them with your friends.